Clay Douglas. My guest today is Bruce Curtis, and we're going to be talking about Liberty Villages. We're going to be talking about, well, the war. And let me open it up today. On the heels of the NDAA. Now, if you don't understand what the NDAA is, it is basically a way to suspend posse comitatus in this country, which has been around for a century, and allow the use of troops and the arrest and the pickup without a trial of Americans. Now, add to that the Obamacare, which has it down for you folks that in 2013 you will have to take a chip in your hand that will tell the government how much money you got and what kind of care you're going to get. Add to that the stimulus, the son of stimulus, the Patriot Act, and the takeover of auto, energy, media, and movie industries, and the relentless implementation of Agenda 21. The Obama regime running our country into the ground has issued an updated executive order, which to literally millions of America immediately suggested the probability of martial law in the very near future. We're left to scratch our heads and ask, why now? The only possible answer is that America is, in fact, right now in the vicious throes of a cold civil war. Cold as in nonviolent, and civil as in nationwide, an attempt to force a new government-controlled ideology upon an unwilling public. And the forces implementing this agenda are relentless. So relentless, too, must be lovers of liberty. We must fight back in our hometowns now, demanding that the governors of our sovereign states and members of our congressional delegations take a principled stand today for freedom by opposing the National Defense Authorization Act's arrest and detain provisions with active resistance. No more. You need to demand repeal of habeas corpus violations, petition state executive Congress, and I've always said pushing back on NDAA is just the tip of the spear. All the Obama tyranny must be peacefully but actively resisted. The National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order is nothing more than a blatant attempt to stir trouble of the highest intensity. The regime is looking to see who jumps, and to see the movement that happens among the most vocal defenders of our rights. That's you and me. They're poking us to see if we will go over the edge and do something stupid, that there will be a crisis, and it'll be our fault. If any of our number are provoked enough to rise to the proverbial bait, they will finally lower the hammer, all in the name of national security and public safety. Bruce Curtis, do you agree with anything I just said?
Well, Clay, I agree with everything you just said, except I have a little problem with the idea of the free American, because it's kind of a little bit like the extinct Australian bird.
Yeah,
you know,
I really don't like being the only one, Bruce, or the last one, you know?
You're like the last Kiwi.
Yeah. And what is wrong with people? Now, look, you know, I happen to be one of the more well-read people in this country. But even without that, I mean, it's real obvious what's happening. It's starting to make it into the mainstream now. You know, we've got a communist regime taking over. We've got to, and I sounded radical 15 years ago when I said they're pushing us to do the same thing to us that they did to the Soviet Union. But isn't that exactly what's happening here with this new executive order too?
Well, yeah, let me make a comment on that executive order, because I started analyzing it, and I wish I could have found my little document that lists out all the executive orders going back to FDR. But there's executive orders that Papa Bush 1 had passed, and Harry Truman and other presidents. If you go through them, all the things that Obama Obama listed in the executive order have already been given to the office of the president years and years ago. So in a way, it's nothing new. It's more like him. He's just flexing his muscles. And I think they're just provoking the American people to see if they can get them to flinch. I think they want people to make an uprising so they have an excuse to declare martial law and use all of these executive orders and pop people into the pokey, into these internment camps. And I think it's a very transparent agenda. I think that they have failed to move because they know that the United States is the last man standing because of one thing, and one thing only, the Second Amendment. The fact that there are more firearms in this country than probably most of the rest of the world is a sign to them that they better proceed with caution. They've got to get people on board. So there's been a massive re-education program, a massive propaganda program going on through the movies, through what we call directed history, and they have directed people's decisions. They have herded people up, herded up their mentality, and reprogrammed them so that they would think of all of these things as terrorists, and think of their fellow citizens, their next-door neighbor, as terrorists. And this is essentially what Hitler was able to do, using Scripture. And by the way, there is an interesting book out called Hitler, God, and the Bible, and it shows how Hitler used the Bible to manipulate people's thinking. So, we have the same thing going on in this country where, people, the politicos, the congressmen and the executive branch members and the judges and even military members who have sold out to the Council on Foreign Relations, to the banksters, to the Vatican, to the Crown Temple, to all, this whole vast network of a new world order, the IMF, the UN, it's all been in place, very strongly in place since the late 40s. So, we have people who have sold out, who are treasonous, who are traitors, and therefore we're going to have to face a very challenging future. And I do not agree with these so-called pundits, these wannabe prophets, these new age, bobble-headed, purveyors of pseudo-positivism and bogus dreaming, that these people who say that the cabal is collapsing, is running, is hiding, is shaking in their boots, is being taken down. I don't see the evidence. I still see chemtrails all over the Midwest. I still see people being sorely oppressed in the courts all over the U.S., and I do not see signs that the evil is being stopped.
Well, I've said I think we're putting the wrong people in jail. Anytime somebody can walk up to you and with a badge and say, "What do you got in your pocket there, son? Let me see that. That looks like a banned plant. You're going to have to do time." We've got more people in prison right now than any other country in the world. I mean, so what do you call it? I mean, whether it's communism or fascism, was Hitler might have tried to save the German people from what happened to the Russian people when Stalin killed 60 million of them. We don't, and we don't look at that. It seems to me that we had 3 communist countries that ganged up on Germany, and now these forces now. We've got China, we got Russia. They've been trying to stir up a war between Russia and us for 50 years. And now, as I just said, we got a Cold War going on right here in this country. You're right. They're trying to demonize Americans. I call myself the canary in the coal mine because I said they'll come after me first because I'm being vocal about this.
Well, it's definitely, I look at it that I believe the whole thing was incubated in Germany and transplanted to the United States to grow it up into full maturity, because the United States had the resources, the infrastructure, the manpower to build a global new world order. Germany didn't. It's a small country. So they incubated it, they made it look bad, they killed it, and now they put on a pretty face of fascism, the friendly face of fascism, which is what we have here, which is corporatocracy. It is the rule of corporate authorities. It is mammon. It is the absolute rulership of money and a total honoring of the state, as if the state is God, as if money is God. And in the rule where money is God, anything goes. You can kill people because money is God. You can take the elderly, and instead of giving them a good quality of life, you can rule that they've had enough. They're just not going to get any more medicine. They're not going to get any more utilities. They're not going to get any more food, which is basically, in a sense, the way that the health care plan can work with older people. And you can take disabled people, or you can take amniocentesis and evaluate the DNA and say, oh, this child looks like it has a high chance of becoming a Down syndrome baby. We're going to kill this child because this child has no value. And this is the way, this is the attitude towards life. These people overthrow the law of God. They overthrow the Ten Commandments, and it's going to come back upon them like a nuclear bomb.
And they are attacking Christianity on every level. The Christianity's being attacked. I mean, didn't HBO just come out with good Christian bitches?
Yes, and yeah, they're attacking everything that even beyond religion. Let's get beyond Christianity, beyond Judaism, beyond some of the foundations of good teaching, and they're attacking the very law of God, which is inscribed in the universe. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet. Well, what do they think these lawyers are if they're not master coveters who covet every piece of property, everything they lay their eyes on, and they set in motion legal ways of stealing it all? And that's what we live with.
And we've got this whole bar association thing. You're speaking about the lawyers here. We went to war in 1812 to try to destroy all the records of the 13th Amendment that barred lawyers from having a position. And now you've got the British accredited registered agents in every branch of government, in the judicial, in the Congress, and in the presidency. I mean, of course, he's been disbarred a few times, and his wife's been disbarred a few times, but...
Well, Clay, that the original 13th Amendment, I know you know this well, and probably most of your listening audience knows this, but the original 13th Amendment would have barred any kind of foreign agents. In fact, it declared people that received titles of nobility, such as Esquire, and it prohibited them from serving in government and even denied them citizenship. So according to the original 13th Amendment, all of these lawyers don't even have citizenship. They shouldn't even be here. They're foreign agents, and there is a statutory law that requires them to register as foreign agents. But whoever does, they never register. So we're living with an occupation of a foreign power. We can even call it Babylon if we want to trace its roots back far enough. And I just look at it as another chapter in the war. As you call it, the war, as a Bible scholar, I kind of like to call it the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, like our good friends from the Qumran community, the Dead Sea Scroll community, wrote a scroll called the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. And we are in the final chapters of that war. So there's no point in bowing down, taking the chip, and kissing the feet of Babylon now, because the war is almost over.
Isn't it interesting? The people that ran Babylon, they had a hand in writing the Bible and constructing the Bible and starting the Catholic Church, which is one of the power bases, along with the banksters of this whole world thing. Washington D.C. being another power base.
Exactly.
And
the City of London, right? The
City of London, yes.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, come on, even just think about that for a second here, folks. Did you invest in gold? If you'd invested in gold like the banksters did back when it was $16 an ounce, and by the way, then Roosevelt, the government doubled the price of gold after they gave it all to the banksters, after they took it all from the American people. They've been doing this to us for a long time, Bruce. Now it's starting. Suddenly, what's happening here is a civil war. We are getting the information. We know about the banksters. We know what the con is. We know that it's not really necessary for us to borrow money from a bank so we can pay for our house 3 times. Under biblical law, usury is illegal, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And in fact, the whole mortgage scam is fraud in the very beginning, because the real credit, the bank doesn't loan you anything. It produces the credit from your signature. That's the value of the note, is your signature. Your signature is what produces the money, because the American people are the guarantor. They are the surety for the national debt. So no one can produce credit except the American people. And this is the big lie that has been held from them. It is one of the greatest secrets of this country, is the national bankruptcy. And the judges and the lawyers are sworn to secrecy about the national bankruptcy. But this country in 1933, and you can see it in the notes in the congressional record, that Louis McFadden announced that this country had been declared bankruptcy, and all of the property and all of the people had been handed over to the receiver. Now, that is, in other words, your property is mortgaged, and who is the receiver? The receiver of the bankruptcy is now the IMF. So all the titles through the IMF are held by the Crown Temple in the Vatican, all the titles to all of the property, and the title to your body, your birth certificate, which is a certificate, which is a title, which is like a deed. It is an actual title that you only have equitable interest in. You do not have the legal title to your own body.
And if you want to drop out of that, then suddenly you're a rebel, you're anti-government, you're an extremist, you're a racist, you're an anti-Semite, right?
Yeah, that's right. So if you want to complain that you can't be chipped, then the Army can grab you by the arm and say, hey, we own the legal title to you, you're under our jurisdiction, and we're sorry, but we're going to chip you. And that's the way it's going to go down.
It's in the healthcare legislation that you will be required. You know, that kind of brings me back to this point. I mean, how long have these Satanists or these evil people or the dark side, the dark force, how long have they been doing this? Was the Bible predictions? Was that prophecy, or was that a plan for somebody that just don't have our best interest in mind? I mean, as I see this, everything we're talking about here is that you Americans, us as Americans, are slaves. We're chattel. We're owned. They pledged your right, and that's what you are. And if you're not going to go along with that, then you're a rebel, and you're going to be demonized. That's what they're in the process of doing now. Anytime a communist regime takes over a country, communist, fascist, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, two wings of the same bird. The plan is divide and conquer. If you were just thinking, is this good for me as an American? Is this good for me as a family? Is this good for me as a property owner? The answer is no. And the problem that I see here, Bruce, is there is no. Let's see, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't treason still a hang in the fence?
Well, they took away the death penalty from treason in the statutory code, I believe, but it should be a hanging offense. According to the Bible, treason is a very grave, death-dealing crime. Yes, it's worthy of death.
Okay, but no crime against it now. And if a banker can rip off $2 trillion,
yeah,
and not account for it, where are our courts? The lawyers are just covering for the banks. The lawyers are working for the banks. The Secret Service is the CIA and the FBI are working for the banks. They're protecting the bankers' interest. And nobody's looking out for the people's interest. If you try to do something like I did after Waco and start the militia, suddenly you're a terrorist. They couldn't make that stick with me because I started the militias in the governor's office.
Yeah, that was a very wise move. And these people are very smart. Look who started the CIA. It was bankers from Wall Street. John Foster Dulles, Allen Dulles.
Yes.
We know what the scam is. The love of money is the root of all evil, and this is an evil system which keeps people so enslaved, so occupied, working for the beast, that they have no time for their spiritual development. And that's why we need to get on our agenda, and why, I think once we get to the second half of your program, we can focus a lot on how to move the agenda of the people forward, rather than stay on the agenda of these evil controllers, evil programmers.
I felt for a short time, I thought that the Occupy Wall Street movement, the End the Fed movement, and the Tea Parties that kind of came out of those two movements, I thought that there was a ray of hope. But they immediately infiltrated the Tea Parties. We want to go bomb Iran now. We need to bomb Iran, says Sarah Palin, Tea Party darling. Divide. Everywhere I look, I see a divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer.
Well, who funded Occupy Wall Street, Clay? Do you know who funded Occupy Wall Street?
George Soros, I would assume.
He put money in there, but also XE, which was formerly known as Blackwater. So Eric Prince also funded Occupy Wall Street. So it's a whole strategy. It's a strategy to trip up the people and get down and to move further towards martial law.
Yeah, the Occupy Wall Street movement, what happened in Seattle and what happened in Washington or in New York there, they were trying to stir up the conflict between the people and the police. They were trying to make the police, they were trying to militarize our police. They're trying to make this martial law happen.
Yeah, they were doing it, and the people are being very good all over the country. People have resisted the temptation to take up arms, which is very good. It's important that people stay nonviolent, because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. We need to use spiritual weapons, and one of the foremost weapons is the sword of truth. The sword of truth cuts through absolutely everything. And that's what you do, Clay, and that's why it's so nice to have some time with you on the air to to air these issues and to use the sword of truth and cut through all this BS.
It's hard to do because the media is controlled by the banksters. The media is controlled, and they're trying to make veterans look bad. Homeland Security's trying to demonize veterans. At the same time, Ayn Rand was right 50 years ago when she said the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us.
Yeah.
Isn't there? I mean, the plan of the elite is to eliminate a few billion people that they don't want to support. They call us useless eaters, and that they've got the nuclear weapons to do it. But it's more than that. The chemtrails, the genetically modified food, the food that you're eating right now, the medicine that the doctors are giving you, besides having a 200,000% markup, are killing you slowly. We've got more. How many Americans? I think something like 50 million Americans have cancer.
Have what?
Have cancer. Cancer.
Yeah.
We put billions of dollars into cancer research, and hash oil will cure cancer. Hemp will cure cancer. Hemp will stop this. They've taken our food away. They've taken the good food away, and left us with the cotton and the genetically modified trash.
Well, that's because cancer is an industry, Clay. It's not a disease. It's an industry, and they farm it, they grow it, and they reap the benefits by keeping people barely alive with poisonous chemotherapy and radiation, and they destroy people's strength and keep them barely alive so they can soak them for hundreds of thousands of dollars per case. And that's why it's a multi-trillion-dollar international industry, the cancer industry.
See, the only one that equals that is the military-industrial complex. War. I mean, what a racket, huh? Hey, okay, we created an enemy over there, and we found out that they got the atomic bomb, so we really gotta really go into production, make all these weapons, and then the press propagandizes us. So we go over and kill 1 million people in Iraq, a few million people in Korea, a few million people in Vietnam. Well, guess what, folks? It's our turn now. We're the target here. Because our Constitution is the only thing that can stand up to that. And every member of Congress is going after the Constitution. Why isn't any of them going to jail? I mean, these people ought to be tried. The banksters are to be tried for theft, for fraud. We've got the evidence on them.
Oh, yeah.
But Bruce, it's not happening. It's not happening. So there's something wrong with the whole system. You are slaves. Bruce just pointed that out to you. And I've been studying this and going back through history for as far as I can go. And I realize that it keeps happening again and again and again. And in the next half here, we're coming up on a short break. In this next half, I want to know what we can do about it. I came up with an idea.
Clay,
yes, sir.
Before we break, I want to say, you mentioned slaves again, and I want people to know that the police are slaves. In 1694, in the colony of Virginia, the Vatican put forth a document that said, among other things, slaves are never to be trusted with a weapon. But if your slave is trustworthy and can carry a weapon, you must give the slave a badge to identify him. So you can just tell any cop he's just a slave with a badge, just a tool of the Vatican, a tool of the world system, a tool of evil, a tool of Satan, and that's all there is to it.
Okay, when we come back, I want to ask you about the whole Catholic Church, Jesuit. Constitution allows you to worship any way you please, but I'm not happy with the organized religions. I think we got a direct connect to God, and I want to talk about some solutions. I've come up with one called Liberty Villages. I want to talk about that too on the second half.
Great.
It's how do we live? Can you give me a time, a point in history when it's been easy to be free?
We've always had government. Government has always been, as Thomas Jefferson said, and I think James Madison also said, that government's the principal obstacle for people. It's always becomes an enemy of the people. So we've never really, going back to Babylon, the only time there was some decent government were a few scattered years here and there around the world. In some places were tribal governments, like in North America, during some relative years of peace, the Cherokee, the Iroquois Confederacy, sometimes there were just beautiful moments of living in harmony with the land and living in peace with a higher law form, like the Cherokee law form or the Iroquois law, which, of course, Jefferson and others modeled a lot of our Constitution upon the Iroquois law. So we can talk about that after the break.
All right. What we're going to talk about after the break, folks, is an answer. I asked myself, Bruce, how did we live in this country 200 years ago? What was it like when the people came over? It's and I think let's see. Sorry, I got something hanging up here. Hopefully that'll straighten up. Damn it. Machine's locked up for a moment. Come on, you sucker here.